Garrett Nussmeier and LSU snubbed by the SEC media. You know I got thoughts. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Going to talk today in reaction to the preseason All-SEC team and order of finish as voted on by the media in Atlanta at SEC Football Media Days. Now, I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm going to tell you what they did, and then I'm going to respond to it, tell you how it transpired that way and what actually should have happened. First and foremost, LSU was picked fourth by the league media. Probably not a great surprise since everyone always just defaults to the teams that they seemingly always default to. Bama, Georgia, now Texas as well, because Arch Manning, of course, is going to be the second coming, and Texas was in the playoff a year ago. So Texas got 96 points. Georgia with 44. This is to win the league. This is to be the league champion. 96 media members voted for Texas. 44 picked Georgia. 29 picked Alabama. 20 picked LSU to win the conference. So those were your top four vote getters to win the league. South Carolina got, then big drop off. South Carolina got 5. Oklahoma 3. Vandy got 2. Florida got 2, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Auburn all got 1 vote apiece to win the league. So overwhelmingly, Texas, then Georgia, Bama, LSU, kind of all close together after that. There were roughly 1,100 media members gathered. Everyone got a ballot. I was there, I got a ballot. 1,100 media members. What I just spelled out for you totals up 204 votes. That means of the roughly 1,100 credentialed media members, only 204 actually filled out a ballot. Now, I will tell you candidly, I didn't fill out my ballot. Our crew from 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge that was credentialed and was there, I'm not sure that maybe one of the 6 of us from 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge and Louisiana Sports.net, maybe one of the 6 filled out a ballot. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know 3 of us didn't. Anyway, point being, only about 20% of the media gathered actually bothered to fill out a ballot. So take all of this with a grain of salt for what it's worth. Not only was LSU picked 4th in the conference, when you look at the preseason all-conference team, the thing that I have a gigantic problem with is that the media voted LaNorris Sellers as first-team All-SEC quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier second team, and then Arch Manning was the third-team preseason All-SEC quarterback. Now, I just got done telling you why none of this actually matters, but it still bothers me to my core. Because what this illustrates is an egregious degree of lazy from people who actually do bother to fill out their ballots. And it's not just to say you have to agree with me or you're wrong. There's plenty of times I've been wrong. But sometimes when you're filling out a preseason all-conference ballot or projected order of finish, all you can go on, because nobody has even taken a snap yet, all you can go on is previous experience. So let's, for example, start with the quarterback situation, which we've described. Then I'll get to the order of finish, which I've already shared with you my projected order of finish. I did it on a previous episode. Everydayers heard it. I'll get to it here in a second. All we can go by is what we've seen from these players already. A year ago, LaNorris Sellers, as the starting quarterback at South Carolina, threw for 2,500 yards, 2,534 to be exact, 18 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. So 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks. Garrett Nussmeier threw for 4,052 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 12 picks. By the way, Nuss's QBR was 80. Sellers was 69. Across the board, Garrett Nussmeier had a better season than LaNorris Sellers a year ago. Also, might I add, that Garrett Nussmeier and LSU won in Columbia, South Carolina, beating LaNorris Sellers, who was injured and didn't play for the second half of that football game. And then I could also point to a game that South Carolina lost at Ole Miss, where a LaNorris Sellers-led offense scored 3 points. Kick rocks with this stupid LaNorris Sellers conversation. I get it. He's 6'3", 240. He had an amazing bowling ball run late in the game against Clemson. He is a fantastic athlete, but for half of last season, LaNorris Sellers couldn't hit water if he fell out of a friggin' boat. Now, in the second half of the year, he got much better, and maybe they take a step. But I also watched LaNorris Sellers the last time out against Illinois in the bowl game lead his team to a loss, 21-17, where he threw for 260 and no touchdowns, and and one touchdown. And I'm looking for his rushing stats, forgive me. He threw for 260 yards, one touchdown, and he ran 11 times for 19 yards. 11 times for 19 yards. Again, people have in their mind the Clemson game where he ran 16 times for 166 and 2 scores. Again, he is a bowling ball and he's a terrific athlete, and I understand all that. Even if, and I know some of you have said, Matt, to not include LaNorris Sellers' rushing statistics on the season against Garrett Nussmeier is disingenuous. Fine, let's do that. Last season, on the year, LaNorris Sellers ran for just over 600 yards. He ran for, to be exact, he ran for 674 yards and 7 touchdowns. So even if you add in LaNorris Sellers' rushing total and his rushing touchdowns, Garrett Nussmeier still accounted for nearly 1,000 yards of more offense than LaNorris Sellers and still had more touchdowns as well. So Garrett Nussmeier threw for more yardage, accounted for more touchdowns, accounted for about 1,000 yards more of total offense, beat South Carolina in Columbia, and never once had a game like LaNorris Sellers did against Ole Miss where they got shut out of the end zone. 3 points against Ole Miss. This is the echo chamber media at its absolute worst, where people just listen to what other people say. I say it all the time. Everyone who is a local market media member, you cover the team that you know very deep. You know everything about your team. And then you know surface level about the other 15 teams in your conference. What people think they know about Garrett Nussmeier is he throws interceptions. I went up and down Media Row all throughout SEC Media Days. I probably did 30 interviews on other radio stations. And every single one I talked to, every single radio host I talked to, not a single one of them, not one knew that Garrett Nussmeier was the leading returning passer in all of college football. Literally, 4,052 yards. Nobody else returning from a season ago threw for over 4,000 yards. Garrett Nussmeier is the leading returning passer in all of college football, and LaNorris Sellers, because he had some nice runs against Clemson, ends up preseason first-team All-SEC. Now, I'm going to tell you what to look for, because what is going to be fascinating to see is what do the league's coaches do. The coaches that actually have to game plan, scheme against, watch film, break down all this stuff. I mean, Jim Nagy, who's the former executive director of the Senior Bowl, now the Oklahoma general manager, sat with me on my radio show on Media Row and said point blank that if he were the Tennessee Titans and if Garrett Nussmeier were in the draft, he would have taken Garrett Nussmeier number 1 overall. That's my point. The people who actually know, pay attention to what those people say. Don't pay attention to the 200 lamos who decided to fill out their ballot without even looking at anything associated with either the players or any of the players they were voting on. It's absolutely absurd. Now, the good news is nobody ever, like no player gets a plaque or a trophy for being on a preseason media all-SEC team. Worry about being on the postseason team. I'll give you an example. If you go back to 2019, pretty good year for LSU. The media in the preseason in 2019 voted Tua Tagovailoa as the first team all-conference quarterback. They voted Jake Fromm as the second team all-conference quarterback. And then they voted Joe Burrow as the third team all-conference quarterback. All Joe Burrow did that year was throw for 60 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards and we're up to the greatest season ever. So LaNorris Sellers can have his preseason media all-conference award. What I'm going to be more interested in is what happens when South Carolina comes to Baton Rouge this year and who is standing at the end of the season when all these awards are announced. And I got a good feeling that Garrett Nussmeier, with all the weapons around him and improved defense, and an LSU team that should be in the mix for a playoff berth, is going to be at the top of that list, just like Joe Burrow was in 2019. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Look, I use FanDuel. I love to track my favorite matchups. You can update the app. It keeps fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. Listen, whether you're placing same-game parlays, you're watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you are part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Again, bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I've already railed on what the esteemed members of the media who actually bothered to fill out a ballot did at the quarterback position. The preseason order of finish should be no surprise. Now, I shared with you my preseason order of finish. Had I filled out a ballot, this is how it would have looked. I would have had LSU winning the conference. Now, I want to give a hat tip to a gentleman who texted me on my show text line named Andy. He said, Matt, didn't you pick LSU to win the SEC in 2023? And to his credit, I've forgotten this, I did. And so I went back and found my ballot, because I did fill out a ballot that year. I found my ballot, and I did have LSU to win the conference in 2023. Remember, 22, they made the conference championship game. You had Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., everybody back in 2023. So I was right about the offense. Did not foresee the defense being as atrocious as they were. But so thank you to Andy for that correction. I did pick LSU in 2023. Prior to that, I hadn't picked LSU to win the league since 2016. So I did not pick LSU to win the conference in 2019. But in any event, I do have LSU winning the conference this league, playing Texas in the conference championship game. Again, that's my I think Texas, gigantic questions. People have asked me my big SEC Media Days takeaways. I think the three teams at the top of the conference that the media voted for, that seems to be uniform or unanimous, with Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, whatever order, they all have gigantic questions. LSU is the one with the returning quarterback and the fewer questions. But Texas, despite all their questions, new starting quarterback, losing 4 starting offensive linemen, tons of turnover on defense. They're still very talented, and they have a very manageable schedule, except going to Georgia, which is going to be very tough. Georgia themselves has a lot of real sincere questions. New quarterback. Kirby Smart talked about it. 54% of their roster, first or second year players. They are very, very young this year at Georgia. Uncharacteristic, and that's a team that backslid from 5th to 30th in total defense, or 15th in the SEC in rushing offense a year ago. So Georgia, major sincere questions. Same with Bama, obviously. Ty Simpson coming in at quarterback. How will that look? We don't know. So that's how I have it. I have LSU beating Texas, then Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama. After that, I go Missouri. By the way, the media picked Missouri 12th. I'll get to that in a second. Again, people that don't pay attention a lick. Missouri won 10 games a year ago, and their schedule is soft as baby poop. Missouri's going to be up there just because they play an awful schedule. I then have Ole Miss, Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida, Oklahoma. I think all three of those, South Carolina, Florida, Oklahoma, are all 7-5. Then Auburn, Vandy, the bottom three, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi State. That's what I voted, or that would have been mine if I submitted it. Here's what the league did, the media. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, like we talked about, that was the top 4. Big fall off. South Carolina, again, they go South Carolina, Florida, Ole Miss, then Texas A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma. Then you have a big drop-off to Auburn 11th, Missouri 12th, Vandy, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State there at the bottom. Again, the things I have a big problem with. South Carolina 5th. Again, just look at South Carolina's schedule. It's so much. South Carolina loses its entire defensive line. They lose Nick Emmanwori in the secondary as well. They lose Raheem Sanders, their starting running back. They lose a ton off that team. They open with Virginia Tech. Then they play South Carolina State, Vandy at home. They're at Missouri, who they always struggle to beat. They have Kentucky at home. Then they're at LSU. They play Oklahoma, Bama, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, and then Clemson. I think they're losing to possibly Missouri, LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, or Texas A&M. One of those, or both those on the road, and then Clemson as well. I think this is a 7-5 football team. I think the media is totally missing it on South Carolina, and I would say the exact same about the Florida Gators. You can be super high on DJ Lagway. The point is, DJ Lagway's stats were almost identical to Michael Van Buren. Both were freshmen last year, starting in the SEC. Van Buren at Mississippi State, Lagway at Florida. The difference, Lagway was a 5-star, so people give him the benefit of the doubt. After they play Long Island and South Florida, they're at LSU, at Miami, home against Texas, at Texas A&M. I think they could lose all 4 of those games. I think Texas or Florida could be staring down the barrel of a 4-game losing streak. Then they get Mississippi State, Georgia, which should be a 5th loss. Then they're at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State. Even if they win all 4 of those, they're still a 5-loss team. I think at best Florida 7-5. I think Billy Napier gets fired after this season. So again, the media assembled thinks much more highly of South Carolina and Florida. I have them lower. They then go Ole Miss, who another one who they return. Ole Miss returns 4 starters, 2 on offense, 2 on defense, but their schedule is soft as Charmin. And you look at Ole Miss's schedule and you go, okay, well, that's why I would have them higher. Ole Miss plays Georgia State, at Kentucky, revenge game, Arkansas, who's going to be terrible, Tulane. They get LSU at home. They play Washington State at home. Then they go at Georgia, at Oklahoma, then home against South Carolina, the Citadel, home against Florida, then at Mississippi State. I mean, LSU's a tough game, but they get it at home. They got to go to Georgia, to Oklahoma back-to-back weeks, which is probably the toughest part of their schedule. At Georgia, at Oklahoma, South Carolina, that 3-game swing right there. If they can manage to go 1-2, 2-1, I think they end up probably a 9-3, 8-4 football team. Does Ole Miss. So I'm a little higher on Ole Miss than the rest of the league. And then the rest of the league is just kind of what it is. So take these preseason predictions for what they're worth. I'll say it again. You're talking about 1,100 credentialed media and only 204 bothered to fill out a ballot. But it's what it is. I told you where I stood. I'm on the record. It's recorded. The great thing about digital media is there's no running from it. It's here forever. We'll come back in December, and you'll either laud me for being right or you'll laugh at me for being dead wrong, and you can point and laugh, and I'll own it. But bottom line is the LaNorris sellers love and hype, I think, is a total joke. 6'3", 240, great athlete. He'll make some spectacular plays. But South Carolina, I believe, is a 7-5 football team. And I think LSU is a college football playoff team this year. And Garrett Nussmeier at the end of the season, which is more important, will be the preseason or will be the postseason all-SEC quarterback. Hopefully, we'll have a seat in New York for the Heisman Trophy presentation. And by the way, I'll remind you, the coaches' preseason all-SEC poll comes out in August, about a week before the start of the season. That'll be pretty telling with the coaches that actually scout and play against these players, what the coaches say. And I have a feeling the coaches might lean Nuss over LaNorris. But time will tell. August 30th can't get here soon enough. LSU at Clemson to kick off the season. And you know we'll be here every single day. It is Locked On LSU. Thanks for making us your first listen. Please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Facebook, or not on Facebook, excuse me. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day. It's Locked On LSU, your team every day.